In my over 200 hours of gameplay, I have learned a ton of tips that are going to help save your life. Like this tip, say one of your favorite pals is incapacitated and you don't want to wait 10 minutes. Well, you actually don't have to. All you need to do is drag your pal into your base, and once your pal lands unconscious into your base all floppy-like, eventually one of your pals will actually pick it up and rescue it. You can also kind of push the pal over to one of the beds. Sometimes this helps it get rescued a little bit faster. But essentially what will happen is one of your other pals that's available will pick it up and place it on a bed for you. This will instantly revive it and allow it to start reviving health as well. So if you just leave it on here for a few seconds, you can see that pretty much every second we're getting a nice tick of HP. You can also revive HP by placing your pal inside of your pal box, and it'll get those same ticks of HP recovery. As long as they're not incapacitated, they will just regenerate HP in here. But I do think they recover HP faster on the bed, especially if it's a better bed. There used to be another way to instantly revive your pals, but I believe there was a patch that removed it from dedicated servers. Under technology tree, there used to be a viewing box that you could place your pals inside to view. I don't have access to it on any of my dedicated servers, but if you do still have access to it in single player, or when it's patched back into online servers, you could build one of those and place your pals inside of it to instantly revive them as well. Now next we got a couple of tips revolved around the base itself. Unfortunately, there is quite a few bugs in the game involving pals getting stuck, not eating, or when you just log out and log back into the game, they're going to instantly become depressed or injured in some kind of way. There currently is no way to avoid some of the specific bugs, but there's a lot of things that you can do to improve stuff. Now right now you'll notice we do have a lot of pals depressed, and that's because I was logged out for a while and logged back in, and they're just quickly all getting that depressed stat. Now unfortunately, depression and hunger will reduce their work speed. So one of the first tips that I can give is while you're playing and you're teleporting to and from base, if you really want to avoid the majority of this, is quickly just unequip everything from your base and then re-equip everything. If there is a chance they are stunned or bugged or not eating, this is a quick way to be able to just make sure everything is broken. I recommend if you really don't want to deal with having to get medical supplies and things like that a lot, that is definitely going to be one of the best ways to make sure that they aren't broken, because they will break. Even if they don't look like it, they might not move from that spot. They kind of get locked into a certain position, and sometimes it's kind of hard to tell what's going on. Now the next thing is to make sure you are crafting high-grade medical supplies. There is a way to buy this high-grade medical supplies in the game, but it is very expensive, and it's really not worth spending 3,000 per high-grade medical supplies when you can craft it for 5 ingots, 5 horns, and some bone. You can get horns from killing deer and many other pals in the game really quickly, and bones you can buy, which each bone is 100 gold. So to craft one of these, if you don't want to deal with farming the bones, you can buy the bones and the horns for significantly less than what it would take to buy the high-grade medical supplies. Now the downside of the medical table is it does take a while to craft these. But if you get yourself a Lylene, which I definitely recommend getting as soon as possible for your base because of the level 4 planting, level 3 handiwork, level 2 gathering, and the level 3 medical production, crafting these really isn't that bad. Anytime you're in base, you can just throw her at the high-grade medical supplies table, and she'll start crafting up stuff for you. And there's a couple different ways you can apply this high-grade medical supplies to your pals. You can run up to them and try and give it to them while they're in your base, but the easier way for me is that I just like to add them all to my party, and then you can go into your inventory. You can right-click or click whatever button it is to use it, and just apply it to your pals. I find this to be a lot easier than actually trying to do it with them inside of your base, because you're kind of solving 2 problems at once. You're making sure they're not stuck, and you're healing them at the same time. And in general, I just think it is, in fact, a lot faster. Now, to be able to get a Lylene early, which I 100% recommend, you can take a Rush Roar and breed it with a Nightwing. This egg will hatch a Petalia, and then if you take a Petalia and breed it with a Mosanda, you'll be able to hatch a Lylene. Otherwise, you'll have to go to the little sanctuaries and try and catch one there. Now, if you want a merchant that's going to be able to sell you a bunch of really useful things, you can head to the desert biome and go to Dune Shelter. Once here, you can find the Wandering Merchant inside of the town. You can buy Megaspheres here. There's a couple of skill fruits, high-grade medical supplies, also mind control meds. Don't use these until the game is fixed. Right now there's a bug with these and I don't recommend using them. You can also buy medical supplies. There's leather, bone, and horns here that you can buy. I recommend farming up the horns instead. And next to this Wandering Merchant is going to be another Wandering Merchant where you can buy heat-resistant and thermal undershirts. These are going to be incredibly useful when exploring different biomes. And he also sells all the different ammo types here, which I recommend buying the ammo types rather than crafting them because it's quite frankly just a lot easier. This is also where you can buy a bunch of different fun hats. So if you want to look goofy, this is where you can pick up all the different hats. The next tip is going to help you out in so many different ways. Keeping up your base pal's sanity is incredibly important. It's going to prevent them from getting sick, depressed, and make sure that their work speed is as maximized as possible. Now, the first thing I recommend is making baked berries. It has a higher nutritional value than regular berries, but you'll also notice that red berries offer no sanity increase, whereas baked berries at least offer 1 sanity. And then fill up the rest of the slots in your feed box with something that does not expire. This will make sure that your pals never put regular berries inside of the feed box, so they're always going to be eating the baked berries. And also, pals will always eat first the thing that is in the left side of the box. Now that the berries are in the second slot, all of our pals are going to prioritize eating the baked berries over the regular berries. But the reason that I recommend filling up all of the other slots with something that doesn't expire is you're going to be forcing your pals to eat these baked berries. But the benefit to this is anything that is harvested in your base, whether it be tomatoes, berries, milk, eggs, or any other kind of consumable item, will be automatically put inside of your refrigerator. So that way it's preventing it from expiring a lot faster, your pals aren't accidentally eating it, and it's going to make your life significantly better. You'll notice I do have my refrigerator very far away from everything, and I actually don't recommend doing this. Since we have some glitches with the AI pathfinding and pals getting stuck, what I recommend doing is keeping things close to where that pal's job is. You'll notice I have beds close to the place where they work. I try and make sure that they're not having to go to different locations since all of my watering pals are going to be right near the crops. I also have my mill and crusher next to here so that way they don't have to move very far to get access to it and hopefully prevent them from getting stuck. So basically all they have to do is stay in this spot, go to sleep, or do any work that they need to without having to move around the base. This has helped prevent a lot of issues with the pathfinding and them getting stuck. So I'm going to need to be moving that fridge over to this location. So that way, basically everything can stay in this location without having to move except to grab food. Now, the same way that we're forcing pals to eat baked berries, we can force them to eat other foods. I have an omelet in there right now, which I don't recommend having your pals eat omelets, but it's just an example. But you can force your pals to eat different types of food by making sure that it is in this far left slot. Now, if you are doing a lot of different things in base, and you want to improve your pal work speed, the lowest level increase you can get for work speed for your pals and force them to eat is salad. This only takes 2 lettuce and 2 tomatoes, and you can craft a ton of this and put it inside of your feed bin. You've also got chickpea saute if you got a lot of extra poultry. And there's plenty of other foods that you can force your pals to eat in the feed box to help improve their base efficiency. So essentially, when you want a nice speed boost to their work speed, just drop it into this far left box. You can let them go to town on the food, and the best part of this is it's going to have a much better sanity increase per time they eat. Which means if you want to take this one step even further with the better quality food, you can build one of these monitoring stands. Since you're going to be boosting their work speed with the food, but you're also boosting their sanity recovery with the food, you can then put them to super hard working, giving them a much larger work speed increase. Notice now that our Lylene is at 136 work speed rather than its base default of 70. When you're doing this, you just really need to make sure you have good quality food available in the feed bin, or your pals are slowly going to descend into madness and you're going to have a bad time. So the next tip is you can actually trade pals. Now, it's not a super smooth process, but what you can do is you can open up your inventory, and if you hit you'll notice down here there's actually a drop pal button. If you drop your pal, it'll actually go down as a sphere, and somebody else on your server or a friend is able to pick this up and use it as their own. Now, obviously, this is only efficient if they are not inside of your guild, because you could just plop it down into your base and they could pick it and put it into their pal box from there. So this is how you're going to be trading with players that are not inside of your guild. Bee guards. We love them. We hate them. They have an ability called Be Quiet where they blow themselves up to include your base and everything you love and hold dear, but you need them to be harvesting honey inside of your ranch. Make sure to unequip their skill called Be Quiet. You can click the button and completely unequip it, and then you can drop them into your base and they won't blow themselves up. It's pretty amazing. Now also, if you happen upon a skill fruit called Implode or any of your pals learn the skill Implode, please do not ever learn this skill and put it on one of your pals. All they're going to do is blow themselves up, do very little to no damage, and become incapacitated. And next is a pretty solid early to late game tip. Sprinting around your base is pretty poopy, but you can actually use a Gale Claw to get around your base much faster. The glider that you can craft in the game, all tiers of the glider are actually pretty garbage. But if you tame yourself a Gale Claw, they have a partner skill that allows you to use them as a glider. It also allows you to fire a gun while gliding from this pal, which is a nice little bonus, and can come in handy in many different situations. But once you craft their harness, when you're sprinting, you can just do a nice little double jump and get a massive speed boost across your base. It's significantly faster than sprinting around and makes life so much better. This also comes in incredibly handy when you're traversing the world, especially when you don't have access to fast mounts, because what you can do is, as you're running out of stamina or something like that, or trying to explore to a different location, you can dismount from your mount and hop on your new Gale Claw glider, which is going to be faster than the majority of the mounts you can get early in the game, and be able to get to different locations much faster. Now, the benefit to this is by the time you land on the ground, you can swap back to your bird and hop on it and hop back on it, and all of its stamina is then going to be rejuvenated for you. So it's a nice little way to be able to switch between different fast moving mounts to be able to traverse the world much faster than you otherwise would be able to. It makes life so much easier, and if you can get your hands on a Gale Claw as early in the game as possible, definitely going to thank me for it. Now, they are spread throughout these two different habitats during day and night, and they usually show up in the world between like level 10 and 20. Now, I get a ton of questions when I'm live streaming about what stats I want to invest into. This is definitely a personal preference, but what I focus on first and foremost is definitely getting quite a bit of points into weights, also balancing that with stamina, and then as I get later into the game where things are becoming more difficult, I'm going to start putting points into health. I don't recommend putting any points into attack or defense. It really does not seem worthwhile, but as I mentioned, this is a personal preference. You could also invest into work speed, but I'd rather just use motivational leader pals for that if I really need to. And you really don't need to invest into work speed because you can just make yourself an Anubis with level 4 handiwork and have him craft everything for you. You can get an Anubis early by breeding a Relaxosaurus with a Celeray, or you could grab yourself a Pen King from the Pen King boss fights and breed it with the Bushi boss fight that you can get over here. There's a couple different ways you can make an Anubis early game, but the Relaxosaurus and the Celeray one is probably one of the easiest. Now, speaking of playing with friends, there are plenty of ways for players to gain access to higher level pals earlier in the game, but the problem with this is you still need to get to that level to be able to use them as a mount. Now, right now, I couldn't actually ride a Phalaris until I was level 38 to craft the saddle, but thanks to my partner, who is already level 40, they were able to craft the saddle for me, and I can use this at level 35. Now, the way this works is the higher level person would craft it in the workbench and leave it there for you, and then you go and pick it up from said workbench, and you gain access to have that key item in your inventory. Now, this works if you are in a guild, but it also works if you're not in a guild. Maybe you're higher level, and you want to acquire some people to do some work for you on the server. Maybe they want to be able to get a Phalaris early, and you can craft that saddle, and they can't. What you could do is you could craft this Palgear workbench outside of the blue circle of your base. You can craft the saddle inside of that workbench, and since it's not inside of your base, it's not restricted for people outside of your guild to be able to access. So you craft the saddle, let them pick it up, and maybe trade for like ingots or other things that you might need on the server that you don't want to go farm yourself.